So we'll have a period of silent meditation now. So begin by scanning your body, checking to see if there's tension anywhere. And if there is, releasing it. And then focus on your breath, simply observing the breath from the viewpoint either of your nostrils and upper lip and the sensation of the air as it passes there, or at your belly and watching the rise and fall of your belly. And so simply observe the breath and very closely and see how the breath connects you with the rest of the universe and how we all share the same air and how we're connected with the greenery in the environment that helps to give us the oxygen that keeps us alive. So be aware of that as you breathe. If you get distracted, simply notice that and come back home to your breath. Let's come back to our motivation. So as we generated the compassionate thought and the aspiration for full awakening last night, let's come back to that, enhance it, recall that the purpose of our life isn't just to feel good now, to feel secure or respected or appreciated. But we have this amazing possibility to really develop ourselves and become an extraordinary kind of living being that can be of great benefit. So let's keep our mind focused on what is of greatest benefit, full awakening, and separate ourselves gradually from what is of lesser benefit that eventually brings us disappointment, which is clinging to the happiness of this life. Okay, so with an open heart towards all other living beings, then let's learn the Dharma that will teach us how to progress along the path and develop these kinds of attitudes. Okay. So, sometimes when we, there may be some reaction when you hear let go of attachment to the happiness of this life. Like, what do you mean? Am I supposed to suffer? Is that what attaining awakening means, that I just enlist in suffering from now until then? No, it doesn't mean that. Okay. What we're talking about is when our mind is concerned only with the happiness of this life. Actually, we suffer more. Why? Because our mind becomes very narrow. We develop attachment to certain people and things and our body and all sorts of other stuff, and then have all sorts of expectations of these things. And then, of course, our expectations are not met because we cannot control the external world or the people in it. And then we experience disappointment and disillusionment. Okay. And in the process of running around trying to fulfill all of our needs and wants, we trample on other people's happiness. Yeah, because we just cling on to our own happiness as the most important. And if I do something that disturbs other people or that's unethical, that's okay because it's for my happiness, which is of primary importance, and other people's happiness less so. Okay, and so, it brings us a lot of problems. So it requires, not only at the beginning of our practice, but throughout our practice, to reflect on these basic principles and look at our own lives and see if, like what I just said, which is what I heard from my teachers, which they heard from their teachers, which they heard from the Buddha, and see if these things accurately describe your own life or not. Okay? And we have to do this again and again and again and again. And sometimes we fear that if we, like I said at the beginning, that if we give up attachment and clinging to what we currently think is happiness, that means we won't have any happiness at all. And that's a big misconception. Yeah, it's when we stop clinging to what doesn't work, then we can find something that does work that actually brings more happiness, more internal peace. It's kind of like, have you ever been in a really dysfunctional relationship and it's not working, but you don't want to leave because the happiness you get from that relationship is minimal, but it's the only happiness you know? Have you ever been in that situation? It could be a romantic relationship, it could be a job, it could be who knows what. Is this ringing any bells? Yeah? Okay. So something that's not working, but you can't leave it because you're afraid if you don't have the little bit of happiness and security that it brings you, that you'll be totally bereft. But when you finally get enough courage to leave what isn't working, you discover that you're so much happier. Yeah. And that all of a sudden you have time, you have mental space, you're not feeling so guilty, and you can develop whole other sides of you that weren't developed before. So here I talked about leaving the relationship. What it doesn't mean, it's not saying that we have to all of a sudden break up all our relationships, because what the analogy is showing, what the relationship is attachment. And so we want to give up attachment to things because the attachment isn't working. Okay. Now, sometimes in the process of giving up the attachment, we have to create distance in the relationship because our attachment is so strong that we can't see clearly what's going on. Okay? But the chief culprit here is not the other person, it's our own attachment and our own anger. Okay? So this is what Buddhism is directed at. It's like getting us to look inside at what emotions and what attitudes function and which ones are totally dysfunctional. Okay? So, the thing is, you might say, well, why do we have to give up just craving for the attachment of this life? I mean, a lot of these are they're normal human needs. Okay? I need food and clothing and companionship and love and support and appreciation and the chance to excel and an education. And our list of wants and needs goes on and on and on, doesn't it? Yeah. Well, yes, many of them are legitimate things that we need as biological beings to keep the body alive. Okay? We're social beings, so there's a certain amount of social contact and types of social relationships that also help us thrive. We're not talking about that. What we're talking about is when we go like this. I've got to have it. I need it. Yeah, I can't live without it. Okay, that's what we're talking about. So there's a difference between needing food to survive, which is quite valid, and daydreaming about food, night and day, and the food you like and how much you're going to cook and what you're going to eat and how good it's going to taste and how people are going to praise you for what a good cook you are, and then you'll feel good about yourself, and you can eat this and that, and you're concocting recipes. Okay, so there's a difference between those two things, right? Yeah. So similarly, we're social beings. We relate to other sentient beings. We're interconnected. We help each other. Yeah, we need each other to stay alive more than any other time in human history. We need other living beings just to sustain our life because, our lives are so specialized that we don't all grow our foods and our own food and make our own clothing and build our own houses anymore. We depend on other people to do that. And in turn, we provide services that they can use because they don't have the time to do the things we're doing. So we help each other in this way. And that's quite wonderful. All these sentient beings helping each other so that everybody can stay alive. And that's why His Holiness Dalai Lama calls it survival of the most cooperative, not survival of the fittest. Okay? So we're not in competition to see who's best, but we're cooperating with each other in a way that benefits everybody. So there's a difference between that but I really like this person so much, and they fulfill my needs for attention, for being special, for being appreciated, for being understood, and, all my emotional needs. This person just really, they understand me so well, and they fulfill these needs, and I feel so wonderful and connected. Okay? So there's a difference between just needing the social relationships and then all this other stuff, the sticky stuff. Okay? Because when it's like, I need this person because they fulfill my needs, then what's going to happen when that person isn't there? And are you really growing? Do you know how to fill your own needs? Or do we become completely dependent on other people to fulfill our needs? Yeah, such that when they aren't available, the relationship changes, your children grow up, your favorite person moves away, that then we become bereft and lost. Yeah. Because the reality of the situation, as the Buddha told us, and as we can see with our own experience, whatever comes together is going to separate. So the more we get attached, the more difficult the separation is going to be. Okay, so I'm not saying don't be connected to people. Yeah, connection is good. Attachment to the connection is what gets us all confused. Okay? So that's why, for example, in a monastic community, we don't have special friends. Yeah? We don't have a special friend who we always confide in, who we always talk to, who's the person who's our emotional support system. Yeah. Why? Because we're trying to grow in another way. We're trying to grow out of attachment instead of into attachment. Yeah. And so we try and open our hearts to be friends with many people in the community and to appreciate the good qualities of many people and not just, talk to the one that we really like, who understands us and appreciates us. Okay? Because if we do that, then we're really limiting ourselves. Okay? Similarly, in a workplace, if you have your favorite colleague, and you're always hanging out with that colleague, then it creates a certain feeling in the workplace of cliquishness. Yeah. Oh, these two people are always together, and those two people are always together, and those three people are always together. And then, you have this cliquish thing. Remember, like high school? Yeah. And remember how that's so, then there's in people and there's out people, and there's people you like and people you don't resonate with, and people you deliberately stay away from, and you don't give them a chance to, never talk to them, so you never have a chance to get to know them because you've discerned early on, well, that's the kind of person I don't like, based on maybe one interaction with them, And then other people, oh, these are the kind of people I want to be with, and we create factions and cliques. And that's not helpful in a workplace, because everybody in the workplace needs to cooperate. They need to work together as team players so everybody benefits. His Holiness often gives the example of ants and bees. Okay, so it's not a perfect example, but it works pretty well. And he says that if you look at the ants, and we have, if you walk up the path here, we have two big ant colonies on the right side of the road. You'll see them like it's this. Of course, there's grass coming out and dead grass over them. But if you look, and all these ants work together. Yeah, and they are busy, running here, running there, here, there, doing that, this and that. But because they work together, the whole, ant colony is sustained. Okay, so if you had just two ants who hung out together, and another two ants that hung out together, and another two ants that hung out together, and they only communicated with each other and seldom communicated with other people in the ant colony, what's going to happen to that ant colony? Because if you watch the ants, they are in constant communication with a lot of other ants, because that's how they have to keep everybody on board, so everybody contributes to the overall benefit. If those two ants just, communicate with each other, it's not going to work in the community. Yeah. So we really need everybody on board, together, helping each other without little cliques developing. Okay? So similarly in a family, if you have, a lot of kids, and then two kids go off, and those two kids, and, then what do you have? I mean, they call it a nuclear family for a reason. Yeah. Because we get competition, we get jealousy. Yeah. And it's probably harder to maintain good communication with all of our siblings, because there's so much attachment, because there's so much history. Okay. And similarly with parents too, difficult to maintain communication sometimes. But it's all a process of really opening our hearts and minds to the fact that we depend on each other. Yeah. And so lessening that clinging, lessening the expectations. Okay. So that leads into the section of the book that we're going to be working with now. In all the previous chapters, His Holiness, there was a whole section on developing concentration, but he primarily talked about the nature of existence, and how things are dependent, like I was speaking yesterday, and how that dependency indicates that they are what we call unfindable under ultimate analysis. In other words, that when you search for something that is the rope, or that is the snake, or that is I, or that is you, we can't find anything. Yeah, the snake and the rope exists, but they are designated in dependence on their own bases of designation, and they function according to definitions and names that we've agreed to give them. But we can't find anything in that basis of designation that actually is the object. Okay? And it feels really weird when you really get into this. For example, if there's somebody that you really like and you're attached to, or there's somebody that you really dislike and you want to get away from, there's this strong feeling that there's a real independent person there. Somewhere in their body-mind complex, there's a real person, because there's this real person that you really like, who meets your needs, and there's this other real person that you can't stand because they interfere with your happiness. Yeah. But when you start to really investigate who is that person, and try and search within their body and mind for something that is a real person, we can't find anything that we can really draw a line around and say that's who they are. Yeah. All we find is a body and a mind. We don't find a person. The person exists by being merely designated in dependence on the body and mind. But there's no person there that exists inherently or independently from the designation and our conceptualization. Yeah. So that really rattles us sometimes. Oh, because I thought this person was so wonderful and there's no person there. Or I thought this person was so awful, but there's no independent person there either. And we realize that, okay, in each case, there's a body and a mind. The body of that person is changing all the time, never remaining the same. That person's mind is changing all this time, never remaining the same. So why do we think that there's some kind of independent person there when all of the things that form that person are in constant flux? Yeah. Okay. And that's where this thing comes of expectations. Yeah. There's a real person there. Yeah. Who is like this and this and this, and this is the role they play in my life, and they look the same from yesterday to today. So there's some kind of permanent independent person there who's always going to relate to me in the same way until they don't. Okay? So those of you who have had children, how many of you have children? Do your children always relate to you in the same way?
No.
Yeah. When they're babies, they relate to you in one way. When they're 5, another way. Yeah. How old are your daughters now? 13. Oh, boy.
Exactly.
Yeah. Oh, girl, I should say. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. Kids that were wonderful. Yeah. I know his daughters. Yeah. They're fantastic kids. I haven't seen them since they turned 13. Yeah. Bring them up here. We'll do a number on them, Scott.
I said to say hello.
Okay. Thank you.
They're that.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. They're nice kids. But you know what happens when you become a teenager? Yeah. It's give me the car keys and don't tell me what time to be home. Yeah. And do this and this. They're 13. Drive me here and there, but don't ask me what I did at all those places. Yeah. So, and then 2 days later, they're totally dependent on you. It's like, oh, I'm so upset. My friend, this and that happened to me. And all of a sudden, they want mom and dad and they need your emotional support. And then the day after that, they don't want to talk to you. And then the day after that, they want to go camping like you used to do when they were 7 and 8 years old. So it's really, if you have a fixed image of what your kid's going to be like, that's a setup for suffering. Okay. So it's the same with anybody in our life. When we have a fixed image, that person is just so disagreeable. I don't like them. Yeah. And then, of course, you never talk to them. And every time you look at them, you find something wrong with them. Yeah, everything they do starts to be wrong. When you decide you don't like somebody, even the way they breathe is wrong. Because you're in the meditation hall and they're breathing too loud. Yeah, and it drives you buggy. Stop breathing. It's bothering me. Yeah, whereas somebody that you like, everything they do seems wonderful. Yeah. You watch them cut their toenails and it's beautiful. Yeah. they're meeting my needs by opening up and letting me see them do something so personal like cut their toenail. Yeah. So, this is our crazy. There must be something behind that. You're laughing a lot. You can tell us the story later. But, this is the way our mind of attachment and aversion works, with so much exaggeration. And then we can see how it leads to disappointment and disillusionment. Okay? So that's why when we think of, who are we going to take refuge in? What's a reliable source of refuge for us? That's why we turn to the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, because their help is going to be consistent. Yeah, and they're looking out for our benefit. So we can trust them. So we really have to, when our mind, especially as practitioners, if we're getting too much distracted by attachment and emotional needs and this kind of stuff, we have to come back to, what's our real refuge? What is really going to help us and lead us to happiness? Yeah. It's not going to be this other person. There's a beautiful passage in the Pali Canon where the Buddha talks about, was it the Buddha? Or maybe one of his disciples talks about how they, got involved in the Dharma. And they were saying, I realized that me as an ordinary being, kind of expecting other ordinary beings to fulfill my needs. And me as a deluded being with ignorance, anger, and attachment, expecting other ignorant beings with confusion, anger, and attachment to bring me happiness, that somehow that's not the right way to go about it. So it's a process of really making the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha a refuge. Yeah. But then we go, but they aren't sitting here in front of me, and my best friend is. Well, try creating a relationship with the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. Yeah, in your meditation. Yeah. If you have something to say, imagine the Buddha and say it to the Buddha, and then think, how is somebody with complete wisdom and compassion, going to respond to you? Yeah, you're upset because this person did this and this and this and this. And you say that to the Buddha, and is the Buddha going to go, you're right, that person's totally obnoxious, let's go get him? Yeah. No, the Buddha's not going to say that to you. The Buddha's going to say, oh, it sounds like you're angry. And you go, yes, I am. And the Buddha's going to go, does anger make you happy? And then you have to pause. No. And then the Buddha says, well, would you like to find a way to overcome your anger since it makes you so unhappy? Yes. What is that way? And then, if you've heard teachings on how to work with your anger, you imagine the Buddha is explaining what you've heard in teachings. Or maybe the Buddha says, go look at Shantideva chapter 6, or go look at His Holiness's Healing Anger. Or go look at the best book at all, Thupten Chödrön's Working with Anger. Which, by the way, is totally plagiarized from Shantideva's book. Okay, so excuse me, it's actually all comes from Shantideva. And Shantideva says it all comes from the Buddha. So there you have it. But, you go read a teaching that will help you with whatever problem you have. Yeah. Or you feel like, nobody understands you. Then you have a little conversation with the Buddha. Yeah. And the Buddha offers you some empathy. And then you realize you're, yeah, okay, I feel understood. I can go on now. Okay? So it's up to us to create a relationship with the Buddha, Dharma, Sangha in our own practice. Yeah?
I had an experience this morning in relation to that. I was having my tea.
Hold the...
I was having tea in Ananda, and somebody came, and they were doing their things and all that. And I was able to, I could see it was, my peace was disturbed a little bit. And I was able to say, why my happiness is more important than this person.
Yeah.
And it was like,
Yeah.
why am I more important than that person? That person needs to do their things just like me. So that was really good.
Yeah.
A good experience this morning.
Yeah, they're very good. And being able to do that is a result of your practice that you're doing also on the cushion, because you practice those kinds of ways of seeing situations on the cushion. You gain familiarity, then off the cushion, that kind of idea came up. And okay, yeah, their happiness is just as important as mine. Yes. Yeah, it removed a lot of drama. Oh, I have to give up the drama in my life. Yeah. Because sometimes we're quite addicted to drama in our lives, Some people, there's always a drama going on in their life. Yeah. And you practice Dharma and you have to give up your drama, and then you don't know who you are anymore. Yeah. And then after a while you figure out, oh, maybe I'm happier without all the drama. Yeah. I won't talk about Sarah Bernhardt. Well, well, since you're demanding, and it's a story all about me, is, I used to, as a young person, have a lot of drama with I like and I don't like and all of this kind of stuff. And so my parents took to calling me Sarah Bernhardt. She was one of the early actresses. I don't know if she was a silent, was it silent movies? Did she ever go into the spoken movies? Huh?
She's from France. I think she was on the stage. I don't think she was in movies. I could be wrong.
Yeah. So, she's quite famous. And, drama embodied, So my parents used to call me Sarah Bernhardt. Yeah. And then, somehow, as I grew up, and especially after I met the Dharma, it's like, oh, Sarah, let's retire. Yeah, we really don't need this kind of drama anymore. It's like, it's too much, and it disturbs so many other people too, because it's not just my internal, drama and my feelings, but I start telling other people, and I relate to people in this different way, and it disturbs everybody. And it would be fine if it were a silent movie that they could turn off. But it's not, Okay. So chapter 21 starts out. Oh, no. Okay. Sorry, I don't have the, I thought I had. Is it in? Oh, okay. Yes, thank you. Okay, so the quotation here. Yeah, hail to loving concern for transmigrating beings, powerless like a bucket traveling up and down in a well, through initially exaggerating oneself, I, and then generating attachment for things. This is mine. Is that what's written in your book? Yeah, okay. Then, so that's Jeffrey's translation of one of Chandrakirti's verses. If you enter the foyer of Chenrezig Hall and you start to go around Kuan Yin, on the wall you'll see a big thing. It has four verses.
Page 88 in the Red Book.
Yeah. Does it have, I can't remember if we put all four verses or only three verses.
No, just the bottom three.
Okay. Okay. So these verses are very, very famous. Yeah. So this verse here is actually, he translated in a different way years ago. Like a paddle wheel in motion, migrators have no autonomy. First, with the thought of I, they cling to a self. Then, with the thought mine, they become attached to things. I bow to this compassion that cares for migrators. Okay, so I read both translations because one or another may appeal to you more. Okay, these are very, very famous verses. Okay, so I'll start reading and then we'll comment a little bit. Even though it is necessary in the beginning to have a strong will in order to develop love and compassion, will is not sufficient to develop these altruistic attitudes limitlessly. It is important to join the practice of love and compassion with the practice of insight. Even if you seek to help someone out of concern, without insight, you cannot be very clear about what benefit will come of your efforts. A combination is needed, a good human heart as well as a good human brain. With these working together, we can achieve a lot. Is this what I'm reading matching the book? Okay, because I'm just wondering, since the page numbers were different, maybe he changed things in the book too. Okay, so we need to bring compassion on one side together with wisdom or insight on the other side, and use both of them in a complementary way. Yeah, if we have just the wisdom, then we will lack the compassion to reach out to others and benefit them. If we have the compassion but not the wisdom, then we may want to help, but we won't know how. Okay? So we need both of them. So here's this metaphor for contemplation. In the stanza cited at the beginning of this chapter, Chandrakirti shows how insight can deepen love through understanding the process by which we suffer. He compares the process to how a bucket moves up and down in a well. How are transmigrating beings similar to a bucket in a well? There are 6 similarities. So one says a bucket, the other one says a paddle wheel in motion. I like bucket better because, a paddle wheel, I have the image more of like a steamboat with a paddle wheel, whereas with a bucket, the bucket goes up and down the well. And I feel the analogies are better there. What did we put when we did, we'll have to read. We put a water wheel there? Okay. Okay. So just as a bucket is held, these 6 similarities show us first our own experience in samsara, and then we use them to say if we have this type of dukkha or unsatisfactory experience in samsara, then this is also the experience of all other living beings. And by seeing it that way, then we generate compassion. Okay? So in the stanza cited at the beginning of this chapter, Chandrakirti shows how insight can deepen love through understanding the process by which we suffer. And here suffering, it doesn't mean just this life suffering. It's talking about our experience in samsara. And I prefer to use the word dukkha instead of suffering, because dukkha just means unsatisfactory, and it's but even that is not totally a satisfactory translation. Okay, so don't think when he says suffer in the book that it means I'm suffering, because it also includes what we call happiness in samsara. Yeah, that kind of happiness that from the perspective of the happiness we're capable of experiencing is a grade F happiness, and yet we call it happiness because it's the only happiness we know, but compared to the happiness of Buddhahood, or the joy and fulfillment we experience at Buddhahood, it's really low-grade happiness. Buddhahood happiness is AAA. Okay? So how are transmigrating beings similar to a bucket in a well? There are 6 similarities. Okay, so I'll read through the 6 and then we'll go back and talk about them. Just as the bucket is held in place by a rope, so beings are bound very tightly by the rope of counterproductive emotions and actions, or karma, driven by those forces. Just as the movement of the bucket up and down the well is directed by the operator of the windlass, so the process of cyclic existence is run by an unpeaceful, untamed mind, especially through mistakenly believing that a self exists inherently, and then mistaking the nature of mind. 3, just as the bucket travels up and down the well over and over, so sentient beings ceaselessly wander in the great well of cyclic existence, from the uppermost states of temporary happiness to the lowest states of temporary pain. 4, just as it takes great exertion to draw the bucket up, but it descends easily, so beings have to expend great energy, great effort to draw themselves upward to happier lives, but easily descend into painful situations. 5, just as a bucket does not determine its own movements up or down, so the factors involved in shaping a person's life are the results of past ignorance, anger, and grasping. In the present, these 3 are continually creating more problems in our future lives, like waves in the sea. And 6, just as the bucket bangs against the walls of the well as it ascends and descends, so sentient beings are battered day and night by the suffering or the dukkha of pain and change, and by being caught in the process beyond your control. Okay, through this metaphor, Chandrakirti develops insight into the details of the process driving cyclic existence. First, apply this information to yourself so that you can understand your own plight and develop a strong intention to transcend this dynamic of recurring problems. If your mind has not yet been affected by thinking about the way you yourself wander in an uncontrolled cycle of self-ruin, then when you reflect on the process of dukkha or suffering in other sentient beings, you will not find their suffering so unbearable. You will not find their suffering so unbearable that you would feel the need to help extricate them from this morass. No, I think that you will find their suffering so unbearable.
Well, because your mind has not been affected. Your mind has not been.
Oh, okay. If your mind has not been affected, okay, then you'll just like say, well, whatever. Okay, so let's go back and look at these. Okay, so just as the bucket is held in place by a rope, so beings are bound very tightly by the rope of counterproductive emotions and actions or karma driven by these forces. Okay, so we're like the bucket, yeah, and we think we're free. Yeah, we live in America where there's supposed freedom, at least for some people in some ways. Not for everybody. Yeah. But we think we're free. We can go here and there. We can do what we want. But actually, if we look closely at our lives, we're not so free. Okay. Why? Because on an internal level, we're bound very tightly by the rope of afflictions, what he's calling counterproductive emotions, and karma, okay, or our actions. And we're bound by our afflictions and our previously created karma. So what this means, if we look, okay, when somebody criticizes you, do you feel like you're free in terms of your emotional response? Or do you automatically get offended and angry and hurt? Yeah? Pretty much, we get offended, upset, angry. Whether we show the anger outward or not, we're angry inside. Yeah, we say it's unfair, I don't deserve this person shouldn't speak to me this way. And all of that comes in an instant, doesn't it? Yeah, kind of automatic. Push button, insult me, and instant, answer. Okay? So we feel like we're free, but actually, so many of our emotional responses we're just like automatons. Yeah? We actually have freedom, but because we're so habituated with responding in certain counterproductive ways and dysfunctional ways, that we just automatically go to those ways because we're so familiar with it that we don't even realize we have a choice. Okay? Same way, when we see something desirable, our mind automatically goes, I want it. Yeah? And then we up it. I have to have it. And if I have it, then other people will see me as successful and rich and wonderful and da-da-da-da-da-da-da. And this object will bring me everlasting happiness, and I've got to have it. Yeah. Or this person is wonderful. I never want to be separated from them. Okay. And so again, these automatic, the anger is this thing, the attachment is this thing. They kind of work off each other, actually. The more attachment we have, the more anger we have. The more anger we have, the more attachment we have. Okay? And we're bound by these emotions because we're very habituated with them. And the seeds of these emotions have been in our mind stream since beginningless time. We've never been free of them. So we don't even consider that it would be even possible to be free of them. And then you get scientists telling us that we're hardwired in our brain to be angry, and we're hardwired in our brain to have attachment. And then we say, well, scientists are sitting next to God, or maybe they've replaced God. I don't know. So, yeah, these are things that are hardwired. Maybe I can modify them a little bit, but there's not really the possibility to get rid of them. Yeah, and so then we don't really try. Yeah. Or sometimes our religion tells us, yeah, original sin. Yeah, you have all these afflicted emotions. They're born with you. Yeah, and they're in you, and you can never get rid of them. Yeah, your way to deal with them is to, maybe try and please God, but, you're never going to get rid of these things. And then again, we give up before we even start. Okay? So we're bound by these habitual emotions, okay? And the Buddha tells us, hey, you know what? You can change your habits and you can get rid of the seed of those emotions in your mind stream. And it's possible to do because those emotions are based on misconceptions and misapprehensions. And when you generate wisdom that sees things as they really are and get rid of your ignorance, then all these afflicted emotions, including, resentment and rebelliousness and intimidation and jealousy and arrogance and laziness and the whole lot. When you get rid of ignorance, then all these other views and emotions and attitudes that don't serve you in your life, they too can be eliminated because they're based on ignorance. So it's kind of like when you uproot knapweed, all the flowers and twigs and everything in the whole knapweed plant die. Okay, if you don't know what knapweed is, come back in a month, we'll show you. Okay? It's a noxious weed that we've been working very, very hard to get rid of. Yeah. So you could, if it makes more sense, you can say a tree. If you uproot a tree, then everything, all the branches die. But we kind of like trees around here. Knapweed is a pain in the neck. Yeah. So it works as a better, don't you think? Okay. So if you have something else that's your least liked plant, you can use that too. But the idea is, you uproot that thing and everything that's dependent on it can't survive. So same thing, if we uproot the ignorance in our mind, which is possible because ignorance is based on wrong conception. So when we see things correctly, then the ignorance can't stand up anymore. So then when the ignorance is eliminated, then everything, all the other wrong conceptions and afflictive emotions and wrong views that depend on it, they can't stand up either. And the whole the whole house of cards collapses. Okay? So we're bound by those afflictions, and we're bound by karma. Okay? Karma means actions. So it's our mental actions, what we plan, our verbal actions, how we communicate, either with our mouth or through our fingertips, or nowadays with our thumbs. Okay, it also includes our body language, how we communicate with our body language. Okay, so that's the speech. We say speech, but it really means all communication. And karma is also of our actions, what we do. Okay, so the thing is, the actions we do only happen because we have intentions. and motivations. Without the mind moving, the body and the speech are not going to move. Without the mind having an intention, we're not even going to have the mental action of planning something. Okay? So the intentions of in our mind and how they come out in our body, speech, and mind, those are actions or karmas. Okay? Sometimes our actions are motivated by kindness, compassion, friendliness, generosity, and so on. Other times, our actions are motivated by greed, attachment, resentment, hatred, confusion, arrogance, all sorts of other little gems. Okay? So, especially when you look around at living beings, and we evaluate how often do they do actions motivated by kindness and compassion, and how often do they do actions motivated by self-centeredness and ignorance, we'll find that different beings are different. Some people operate more out of a good intention. Other people operate more out of a bad intention. Okay, both parties have some good and bad intentions. But what we read about in the newspaper mostly is people's bad intentions and the outcomes of those bad intentions. And we read about people who start out with good intentions, and then we find out that their good intentions were corrupt or mixed with bad intentions. Okay? So that doesn't mean the people are horrible. We have to separate their actions from the people. We can say the actions are dreadful or inappropriate or unacceptable, but we can't say the people themselves are evil. But what we can say is those people are bound by the ignorance, anger, and attachment and other afflictive emotions in their minds. Those afflictions make them create destructive karma, and then they experience painful results. Even the beings, the ordinary beings, who create constructive karma by acting out of compassion and kindness, they are still under the influence of ignorance that misapprehends how things exist. So, all of our actions leave seeds, or for lack of better words, energy traces in our minds. If you're studying philosophy, they're the having ceased of actions. And those seeds in our mind influence what happens to us in the future. It's a simple system of cause and effect. You plant daisies, you get daisies. You plant chili seeds, you get chili peppers. Okay? If we plant negativity through doing harmful actions, we get pain. If we plant constructive actions through kindness and so on, then we get happiness because our actions have an ethical dimension. So, because we've had infinite lifetimes, not just this lifetime, many, many lifetimes in the past, we've done many, many kinds of actions. We aren't free of our ignorance. So we're still bound by those actions. We're bound by even the afflictive emotions that manifest in our mind now. Like I was saying, the the push button ones. Yeah, there they are. So we think we're free, but we're so much bound by previously created causes and conditions. Okay? So in that way, we're like a bucket in the well, yeah, that's bound by the rope. And the bucket's got to do it's got to follow the rope. Yeah. So we very often follow our ignorance. We follow our anger. We follow our clinging attachment. And in the process, we create the causes for our own suffering, and we make other people suffer in this life. Okay, so that's what this first condition is, just talking about. So, what we're doing, in the meditation is looking at our own lives and saying, is that true of me? Okay, we just had this whole explanation of condition number 1. Is this true? Does it describe my life? Or is it a bunch of baloney? If it's a bunch of baloney, throw it out. We don't need it. But if it describes my life, then maybe I need to pay attention. Because maybe I'm letting my afflictive emotions run the show such that I don't have real freedom to be the kind of person that I would like to be. Because I think we all would like to be kind and compassionate and wise and so on. Yeah. I don't think anybody here deep in their heart, and I don't think any kind of criminal, would say, I really want to harm people. It's just that people are overwhelmed by ignorance, so their priorities get really messed up. And their way of seeing things get really messed up. And they think that harming others is going to make them happy. Yeah, it's not. But in the same way, when we've all done negative actions, and we all have, we think that whatever we've done is going to make us happy. Even though in the long term, it doesn't, because we've planted these seeds of unhappiness in our own minds. Okay, so that's what we want to focus on, in this first of the 6 things. And just really looking at our own lives. Okay? And, because the Buddha instructed us to test out his teachings, not just to accept them because he said so, but really think about them and apply them to our lives. Now, realizing that our lives are under the control of afflictions and our past actions, it may not be the thing that makes us the happiest in the world to understand this. Okay? So sometimes our mind says, ooh, that is I don't want to really admit that about myself because it's really ugly and painful, and it might mean I have to change and do things differently. And so then we say, oh, no, this teaching is not correct. Okay? We reject it. Yeah, we reject it. Or we say, it's true, but it applies to the people I don't like. They're the ones whose minds and lives are under the control of these nasty afflictions and karma. But me, I have a big open heart, lots of wisdom. I don't make mistakes. I treat everybody equally. Yeah. And so we kind of poo-poo the situation. Or maybe we deal with the fact that this isn't hunky-dory news. Yeah. But in another way, it is good news. Okay. Why? Because if you're sick, okay, when you go to the doctor and you're not feeling well, and the doctor tells you, you know, you have kidney disease, you don't go, oh, yippee, that's wonderful. Okay. Yeah, it's not hunky-dory. But the fact that you know you have kidney disease, now you know what's wrong. Now you can go to the doctor and get some medicine. And if you take the medicine as instructed, you'll recover. So in the same way, learning this about ourselves is not pleasant. Yeah, we're the patient here. We're not the doctor, we're the patient. We go to the doctor, who's like the Buddha, and the doctor can prescribe the medicine, which is the Dharma. And if we take the Dharma with the help of the Sangha, then we can recover. If we don't get a proper diagnosis, and so we don't, or if we get a diagnosis and we don't take medicine, you know, then we're going to continue getting sicker and sicker and sicker. So in a way, getting your diagnosis, even though it's not pleasant, it's kind of a relief because now you know what to do to better your situation in the future, instead of just sitting there continuing to be miserable. Okay? So, you know, it may not be great news to realize and to admit, oh, I have these negative emotions, and sometimes I do really nasty things, and that these things are going to come back and affect me. And in fact, they actually affect me right now. But, you know, to clean the dirt, we have to see the dirt. So say, yippee, I see the dirt now. Yeah, and now I can get the medicine, I can get the brooms, I can start cleaning, I can start the process of healing. Okay, so see it in that way. Don't say, oh, woe is me. I came here on Memorial Day to have light and love and bliss, and instead I have to face, they tell me I have ignorance, anger, and clinging attachment, and a jealousy, and that I've done horrible deeds. I want my money back. But I didn't pay any money to come here, so there's nothing for them to give me back. Oh, I have to deal with this. Okay? So, you can make it through, I guarantee. Because this is exactly the process that the Buddha went through that led him to awakening.